everybody, Amer here again with another Mission Impossible episode review. This time I'm reviewing Season 2, Episode 11, which is called The Council. It's a two-part episode. So Jim uses a record player for his instructions. The mission is very simple. Take down Frank Wayne, head of the syndicate, and get his records detailing money transfers to Swiss banks. The usual team is assembled, with Roland getting a new picture for the dossier scene, and the team also includes a Dr. Emerson Reese, who's a plastic surgeon. During the apartment scene, we get a fairly lengthy discussion about a bunch of things we'll see in this two-parter, and a prelude of what's to come. Willie sets up shop on a hill overlooking Frank Wayne's estate, while he and his fellow Mal bosses discuss their worries over the appointment of a new special investigator in town named Carl Daly, who's actually Jim, of course. Speak of the devil, Jim shows up at the home with U.S. Marshal Barney and a search warrant, and they start messing up Frank's living room, looking for nothing in particular, but they do find Frank's safe. Frank's lawyer arrives with an order forcing them to leave, but not before Barney sets a bug up in the room, and it's overheard that for safety purposes, the safe contents, including the key records that the IMF is looking for, will be moved to Frank's office. Jim and Barney meet up with Willie and Dr. Reese and wait. The next order of business is an uncomfortable council meeting between the bosses and Jimmy Bebo, who you may recognize as Coach from the first few seasons of the TV show Cheers. This is over the matter of money that Jimmy took to Switzerland that ended up not being deposited. Jimmy denies it at first, but breaks down under pressure and admits to the theft. All three bosses agree that this is the end for poor Jimmy, and Enforcer Johnny takes Jimmy outside at gunpoint, forcing him to dig his own grave. The IMF watch from nearby. Meanwhile, Roland and Cinnamon work on some special plaster. Eventually, Johnny smacks Jimmy with the shovel and dumps him in the shallow grave, covering up for what seems to be an eternity. As seconds tick by and Johnny decides to sit by and have a smoke. With some well-placed rocks, Willie creates a disturbance and Johnny heads back to the house. The IMF rush to get Jimmy oxygen and dig him out. There's no heartbeat at first, but after some CPR, Jimmy manages to kick out and survive. Jimmy is taken back to Jim's apartment and is told the price for saving his life. He'll have to teach Roland everything he knows about Frank's past, his girlfriend Ginny, his mannerisms, everything they need to know. Unfortunately for Roland, the first thing is that Frank is left-handed. Jimmy is very hesitant, but once he gets going, things start to take shape. Barney and Willie set up a hotel room with some mirrors and other accoutrements. The mob records are put in Frank's office safe. As the crew heads out, Frank is handed a subpoena by Jim and Barney, who cart him away after discomfiting Johnny of his bullets. Frank is taken to a dark hotel room where he's shown Jimmy's body, found on Frank's property, and Frank is seated in front of the one-way mirror so that Roland can put the final touches on his plaster mask and listen to Frank's speech patterns. Jim actually smacks Frank around a bit and starts interrogating him about all sorts of things, but Frank is too smart to say anything incriminating. The other bosses, Vito and Al, get massively frustrated that Frank hasn't returned, and their lawyer hasn't been able to find any information about where he is. Going into the next morning, Jim starts getting violent with Frank again, which prompts Barney to play good cop to Jim's bad cop, and offers Frank some coffee. Frank takes the opportunity to grab Barney's gun. He calls Al and tells him to come pick him up, but Johnny comes by with another hood, taking a janitor's outfit. Frank takes Barney to the door for protection so that he can get by Willie the guard cop, but Roland, as Frank, knocks him out from behind. Willie allows himself to be subdued by Johnny, and Roland shoots Barney for trying to stop them from leaving as the hoods head out. The bosses decide that Frank has to leave the country after shooting a U.S. Marshal to get rid of the heat on them, but Frank says he's not going anywhere. We move on to part 2, where Frank says he has a plan that will allow him to stick around. Dr. Reese starts working on the real Frank Wayne, while Roland, as Frank, and the rest of his crew go to see makeup specialist Cinnamon, who starts working on Roland's face, ostensibly filling up his features, but actually removing the Frank Wayne mask. Barney and Jim start working on a car, while Willie strategically sets up a utility truck near a manhole. The mobsters continue to watch intently as Cinnamon adjusts Frank's face, including putting back Roland's blue eyes by removing the contact lenses, and providing a special lamp for Roland to use after the procedure. Vito tells Johnny that Cinnamon will need to be offed as she could talk. Roland puts the kibosh on that quickly, takes the gang back to the office. Vito brings Ginny to the office, who is incredulous about Frank's new look, but Rollin puts on quite the show and convinces her that he's the real deal. Jim barges into the office and threatens and smacks Rollin, whoever he is, because Jim doesn't recognize him, earning him a smackdown from Johnny. After Jim leaves, Rollin says he wants Jim hit to send a message, but Vito and Al override him because of the trouble it would bring. Frank's already brought a lot of heat on them. Despite this, Rollin orders Johnny to put a pipe bomb in Jim's car. With everyone out of the way, Rollin opens the kit contained in the lamp he was given and starts working on the safe. Johnny follows Jim, who parks right above Willie's specially prepared manhole, and Johnny follows his orders, planting the explosives. Rollin prepares an elaborate apparatus which is actually able to pry the tumbler lock right off the safe. Meanwhile, Barney works on the elevator at their office building. Vito and Al knock on Frank's door, forcing Rollin to think quickly. Unfortunately, with the lock removed, the usual method of adjusting a painting to reveal and hide the safe doesn't work, so Rollin has to shoo them away with his fancy lamp. Rollin manages to get the safe open and starts taking pictures of the mob's records. Jim heads back to his car, removing himself from a fake dummy back of himself, and crawls out of the car into the manhole with Willie. He remotely starts the car, which predictably blows up, satisfying Johnny, who drives away. Meanwhile, Dr. Reese and Cinnamon continue their work on the real Frank. Johnny gets a slap from Vito for his actions, but Al reminds him that Johnny was just following orders, and the real fault lies with Frank. Vito and Al tell Johnny that Frank needs to be eliminated, but Johnny says he can't do that without a council, and Vito glumly realizes that he's right. Other more senior bosses arrive for the council, and the tide turns quickly against Rollin as Frank, who pulls out his gun. He pulls the trigger, but either there's no bullet or it jams, so Enforcer Johnny moves in as the council makes its decision, despite Rollin's pleas. Rollin rushes out to the elevator, and on the way down opens a trap door that allows the IMF to get Rollin out and put Frank Wayne, now made to look like Rollin, in his place. Johnny catches up with the elevator in the basement as Cinnamon calls the police, who shoot Johnny after a gunfight, and the IMF head out. Johnny, of course, shoots Frank as soon as he sees him. Mission accomplished. I'm going to give this one overall a grade of B. It's a bit of a mixed bag. From what I've read about it in the dossier and other sources, it's very much like Old Man Out from the first season. This is a script that just kind of got a little bit out of control, and there was too much for just one episode, but again, they had to pad it a little bit to fit it into two. Start with the good. The gimmickry is quite good. A lot of the gadgetry and the techniques that the IMF use are really, really good and pretty unique in this episode. The way that they do the plastic surgery and make the proper masks, meticulously of Frank Wayne, and then also of Rollin for Frank Wayne to use later, are quite neat. The false back that Jim uses, when he gets in the car as Johnny is about to blow it up, to convince Johnny that he's still in the car. That was really, really neat. The way that they use the elevators with the trapdoor, very, very elaborate planning. And it's another one of those where, it seems like they had the end in mind and they kind of work backwards, which I really, really do like. Another thing I like about it is that a lot of it is not automatic. Like in so many episodes, it just seems like, when Rollin has to impersonate somebody, he just kind of knows how to do it. Well, let me just look at the guy once and, hear his voice, and then suddenly, I'm a master at his voice. In this case, there's planning involved. The team has to have a plan. How are we going to figure out how this guy moves around, how he walks, how he holds a cigarette, all of those things, because they're going to need to do that in order to convince the mob bosses that Rollin is still really Frank. Part of it may be that he's a mob boss, and obviously he's reclusive and doesn't go out in public a lot and that sort of thing. But still, I like that part of it. I think that makes a lot of sense, and it's good. It's authentic for this episode. I really like that. The plot is okay. It's not great, as I mentioned. It's something that kind of got strung out a little bit over 2 episodes, but it's not terrible. It was actually turned into a movie, which I understand played primarily in Europe. It was called Mission Impossible versus the Mob. So, take that for what it's worth. What I didn't like about this episode, there's not really a whole heck of a lot that's exciting here. Well, as I mentioned, the gimmickry and gadgetry is unique, but plot-wise, it's I don't know. It's good, as I mentioned. The plot is good, but it doesn't really hit a high for me, and it doesn't go to that next level. That's my take on it. Also, the dubbing of Paul Stevens, who plays Frank Wayne, that Martin Landau obviously had to do to, I guess, make this episode flow a little bit better. It's disturbing for me. It's just a little bit too obvious. I'm sure that, the way TVs and audio were back in the 1960s, you wouldn't notice it as much. But, certainly today it comes across as like really, really bad. Even though Landau did a really, really good job, and at first glance maybe you couldn't tell, but I found it to be a little bit bothersome myself, and it's a bit of a downer. Just in case anybody is wondering, I'll just throw this out there. As I've mentioned in previous episodes, I don't know anything about how the mob works, okay? And maybe you've seen this from shows like The Sopranos or whatever. Like, why is this episode called The Council, and what's the significance of the Council? Apparently, again, from what I understand, and maybe this is just a Hollywood thing, I have no idea, but apparently when you're a made guy in the mob, and this is actually true in other organizations as well, legitimate businesses or whatever, right? I mean, there comes a point where you can't just be fired or terminated or whatever, right? You have to kind of have your due process in a sense. And I guess the writers are basically saying that this is kind of the mob's way of doing it. I'm a made guy, you can't kill me, you can't turf me out or whatever. I need to be heard. I need my day in court, so to speak. And that's basically what this is all about. So here we have an episode that covers all the bases. There's nothing to complain about. The plot is good. The cast is good. The stars are good. It's just kind of an okay episode to me. Solidly designed, nothing flashy. Anyway, that's my take on it. Thank you all for listening and watching. Please like this episode. Please subscribe to my channel. And please leave your comments if you think I'm off base or whether you agree with me. I really appreciate it. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.